How does history connect to education? I've been very interested since I came to teach and then to live on Staten Island in some of the ways that Staten Island has been represented by writers over time, and particularly by writers who didn't come from Staten Island originally. That idea of place is often missing in our teaching. I'm David Allen. I'm a professor in the Department of Curriculum and Instruction in the School of Education and Social Work. I've been here at CSI since 2008. My background is initially in English. Got my bachelor's in English literature and in education and teacher education. When I did my dissertation, I looked at how teacher groups in schools collaborated and learned together. And I also looked at some theater arts groups or companies where the actors and directors developed the work together. And I found a lot of connections and methods and strategies that I think can help teachers, especially when they collaborate, to improve their teaching and actually have a better time than being isolated in the classroom, their own classrooms all the time. So my primary research focus over the years has been how teachers, primarily teachers, collaborate and create together. So a lot of what I do is really look at what kinds of protocols or structures support that kind of collaboration, that kind of inquiry, and that kind of creativity. And that connects a lot with my interest in how theater artists collaborate and create together. So I see that as a kind of really natural and under-examined opportunity for learning from one world that may seem very different from another world, theater and teaching. As teachers, we often feel very constrained almost to follow a script. That's funny because that sounds like theater arts. The way I think about theater arts is that we develop the script together. And when teachers see their work as more creative, rather than just following a script that someone else has created for them, they're going to create more opportunities for students to engage with the content that they're teaching, for students to kind of play a part in the educational process rather than being almost spectators to it, as they often seem to be. As I look at how a writer like Dorothy Day, who was a founder of the Catholic Worker newspaper, or Audre Lorde, who is an amazing poet and teacher and feminist and activist, who both lived on Staten Island for part of their lives, how they thought about and wrote about and portrayed the neighborhoods and the parts of Staten Island they lived in, whether it be the South Shore and the beach where Dorothy Day originally lived in a shack, fisherman's shack, as she said, or in the North Shore, the Stapleton Heights neighborhood, where Audre Lorde lived and actually made her home a center for writers, for activists, for lesbians and LGBTQ community members to have more freedom to write, to publish. You know, that idea of place is often missing in our teaching. We teach in a school building that's in a place, but how much is the place and the culture of it and the physical aspects of it really part of what we teach? Teaching ELA, so many opportunities for students to connect to the neighborhoods they come from. Look out the window, go out the door, walk into the neighborhood, go to that park, take a drive to Snug Harbor, take a drive to Sandy Ground, the Free Black community. Make that part of the experience of learning. Another project related to my interest in literary history of Staten Island is to work on a play in which I imagine two writers, Dorothy Day and Jane Bowles, coming together on a train, actually, on the Staten Island Railroad. So I have written essays about Dorothy Day and other writers, but I thought for some reason that for this project to try to imagine or visualize what happens when these two very different people meet and begin to talk to each other as a kind of a research in a different form. And in doing that, it really brought out a lot of more similarities between these two very different women, two very different writers than I would have imagined. So one of the most interesting projects that I've worked on has been to collaborate with the New York City Players, with a project of the New York City Players, which is called the Incoming Theater Division, or ITD. It brings professional actors and directors from the New York City Players and students who are at a incomers or newcomers high school, I should say, which is meant to be for students who have been in the country very short amount of time, so immigrant students. Together, they create work for performance based on issues that are really important to those students and to their lives. The piece that I had the first opportunity to research was called Graceland, and it was performed a few years ago at Snug Harbor. And in that piece, they focused on issues of housing and housing insecurity. I think the thing that stood out to me most about that was the way that the students who performed in it could make their voices heard in different ways. So some of them performed. They performed stories that they had told. Others of them were maybe not ready for performance in that way, but they provided music for the piece. So it was really a beautiful way to see how there are lots of ways that we can help our students to express themselves and to allow their voices to become part of the educational process and beyond the educational process, get out into the world. What can we learn about school leadership from how theater artists work? I do work with a network of superintendents, school superintendents, who are focused on trying to make the schools in their districts more equitable. So we do a lot of work together around visiting each other's schools, examining problems of practice. And I think one of the things that I try to bring to that work is what theater artists emphasize all the time, and that's you can't perform your role unless you're very aware of the other people performing their roles and how what you do, say, act, gesture is going to affect them. So theater artists have this term, you may have heard it, and it's yes and, right? So when someone else, as they say, offers you something, a line of improv, for example, or a gesture, and rather than saying, no, I have a better idea, or no, that wouldn't work, your kind of responsibility and obligation is to say, yes, and let me find a way to add something to that. And through that kind of openness to other people's offers, I think that school leaders and district leaders can begin to imagine how their leadership practice and how the way they work with teachers and principals and students can actually look different than maybe the way it plays out in their minds now. So I've been fortunate to, over the years, work with schools and teacher educators primarily in Colombia and Chile. Teachers there face a lot of constraints, particularly teachers in the public schools, which are underfunded and overcrowded. Many teachers have second jobs just to support themselves. We have to recognize when we teach our students here, pre-service teachers or students who are already teaching, have been teaching, that their lives also have a lot of challenges and constraints. And if we don't understand that as teacher educators, then whatever the theory is that we're trying to teach or the instructional strategy that we think is going to be so great because the research says this, it's not going to land. We have to know our students' lives, challenges, but also the strengths and the assets that they have. I served as a Peace Corps volunteer in Poland, and there I was teaching students in Warsaw who were just coming out of a totally different political system. So when you get the chance to see how other people live differently, experience the world differently, you come back to your own setting and you pay more attention, I hope, to the differences that are right in front of you that we might take for granted about our students or about our schools. Well, CSI is in the real world, that's for sure. Studying education at CSI, I think it has a lot of advantages because we're very close to the schools where our students, CSI students, are going to be teaching, whether that's in Staten Island, whether that's in Brooklyn, somewhere else in New York City. We're not in an ivory tower. Many of the professors that students have here actually teach in the public schools too. So they have that very practical, very school-based knowledge and skills, as well as getting a chance to work with professors like me who taught in public schools, maybe a long time ago in my case, but we're more involved perhaps in the research and the theory. And if we can combine those in good ways, we can provide students with a really strong foundation for being effective teachers in the public schools.